Introduce our speaker. I am actually the immediate past chair of the APA Women in Planning Division. I've been a part of the division for 10 years. So if you're not part of our division, we would love to have you. We are almost 3,000. We want to be 3,000 strong. We're about 2,000 strong right now. And everyone is invited to be a part of these discussions. It is a space that is welcoming and inviting, that uplifts and supports women in their profession here in the US and around the world. So I'm going to get going with our wonderful speakers here today. First, we have Nuran Bassam. She is a feminist urbanist and architect with a PhD in urban design and placemaking, and is the founder of the Gendered City, which began as a book and evolved into a global organization dedicated to creating gender equal cities through feminist placemaking and citizen participation. The Gendered City collaborates with initiatives like UN Habitat's HerCity and hosts the FemDes Network, the world's largest feminist design network, connecting over 500 experts from 35 countries. Noran's work emphasizes inclusive urban design with a focus on nighttime urbanism through projects like Women After Dark and Placemaking After Dark. She also teaches feminist spatial design and theory at the Academy of Architecture in Amsterdam, mentoring master's students on feminist spatial design and urban inclusivity. So her book, The Gendered City, you probably heard of it, has reached readers in over 40 countries, including ours, examining women's experiences and challenges in urban spaces. Women After Dark, set for publication in June 2025. Get ready, it's coming. Delves into the intersectionality of and realities of women navigating cities at night. Her forthcoming book, Feminist Spatialities, will showcase over 50 global feminist projects, further advancing her commitment to inclusive urban design. So we welcome Nuran Bassam. Next, we have Marina Milosov. So Marina is a landscape architect and urban planner with over a decade of experience shaping citywide strategies for sustainable development with a particular expertise in gender equality. So while working for the Mayor of London, she played a key role in shaping policies for some of the most significant urban regeneration projects, including the London Olympics. So she is internationally recognized for leading pioneering research that engaged over 1,000 women and girls to explore the intersection of the built environment and gender equality. And this work informed the development of the UK's first planning policies and practical frameworks to mainstream gender considerations in urban places that work for women and girls. So that was an amazing step forward. And it provides that step-by-step guidance for local authorities, developers, and designers on integrating gender equality into the urban planning and development spaces. So as a consultant, she works with the built environment sector across the UK to embed gender-informed approaches into city planning and development projects. And her contributions have earned many recognitions. And in 2024, she was named a Woman of Influence by the Planner by the Royal Town Planning Institute. So I want to welcome both of our wonderful women here today to speak on such important topics. And so we're going to turn it over to Norhan first for her to talk about her presentation, and then Marina will go next, and then we will have a Q&A at the end. So thank you so much, and let's get started.
Thank you. Thank you, Karin, for this invitation and for being with these amazing, inspiring women. You all inspire me, and I'm so grateful that this conversation has been being commemorated and our achievements being looked widely. And yeah, so glad to be here. I'm gonna share my screen for my very brief presentation. Here. Yeah. It should be now on full screen, I hope. So yeah, the Gendered City. I mean, 5 years ago, I started when I was finishing actually my PhD in urban design and placemaking. I decided to build this questionnaire online and offline of how cities keep failing women, and it led to very amazing intersectional responses. Every day I was very much looking forward to know these testimonies, and I call them human data from across the globe on how the built environment can restrict our lives basically as women and marginalized groups, and whoever who wasn't conforming to the white heteronormative patriarchal able-bodied male somehow have been excluded from the built environment. We know this as well years and years ago, not long ago actually, but women in public spaces was a form of transgression. So I mean we inherently inherited this restrictions in the built environment. And when the waves of modernism and the modernism architecture came across as with the ideation of segregation based on gender roles, so there was a huge segregation between what's public and what's private. So the Gender City published in 2023, but our organization, actually, I'm based in Amsterdam since 2019. I was working closely with communities, and I mean, when I launched How Cities Keep Failing Women, and when I realized that I want to work closely with women and girls communities on this, what I call it, feminist urbanism, gender sensitive urban design. I shifted most of our projects into working with placemaking, activation for women and girls communities, and very intersectional, I have to say. So we work with more than half of the population on activating places. 2 years ago, when I realized this is a niche, not a lot of women are working in our field in this practice, and when I realized that we need to have this collective agency and power, I launched the FemDes, and now has reached 550 FemDes experts from all around the globe. Actually, we exist in 100 cities around the globe, from Kolkata to Beijing to New York and Bogota, Mexico City, and of course in Europe. And every day is a learning, educative journey with our network about the lived experiences of women and girls communities in different parts of the world. So our basics or our morale in the Gender City, that your city has a gender and it's a white, able-bodied, heteronormative, patriarchal young male. And we always say that we need data to prove our case and to convince actually people why gender sensitive design is fundamental to have equal opportunities and access in the built environment. And we have staggering data, and one of these data actually are our very own project, Women After Dark. In the WED series, we are gathering lived experiences in 5 pilot European cities, but actually in this Women's Day, we launched a global questionnaire. We are very grateful for 300, I call it human testimonies about different mobility as well restrictions, specifically in the after dark times. And we know that 70% of women feel unsafe traveling in public transport after dark. And this results to many consequences, from using taxis, Uber, or even restricting the whole commute in a way. So, of course, we all know that it's very connected with the economic disparities and linked to economic autonomy. And we know that as well, most of these issues has been there because of the lack of representation and the lack of women in decision-making positions, but specifically in the built environment and planning professions. It's almost 16% and might average on 20% of decision makers are women. And we know as well that with the pay gap, so across the EU, women earn on average 37% less than men. In many economies in the world, actually, there are restrictions on women gaining capital and as well land tenure. So it's as well connected to housing. And in the urban settings, women tend to be making the majority of the urban poor and hence living in the peripheries. And yeah, we know that as well, 32% of adult women are insufficiently physically active compared to men because of restrictions in the built environment, and what you call it, the step gap that I mentioned in the Gender City book, and how we are jeopardizing our health due to a restrictive built environment in our cities. So, I mean, all of this between the segregation of the public and private, between the gender roles, I believe the first chapter, the city is built built on gendering and this gender division of labor, especially through the modern zoning and how our cities were built, and hence emphasizing on this biases and segregation. So the spatial segregation as well led to inadequate infrastructure, like we know, of course, the trip chaining and this interconnected small trips that women tend to do of the caring activities. And as well, we know that caring is done 75% by women and 80% of it is unpaid. So as you can see, it's a very connected loop of biases or restrictions that really are connected and connecting to the spatial configuration we navigate on a daily basis. So I came up as well with genderification, like gentrification in the book, and as well it's attributing these gendered characteristics and roles and inherited social practices that formed how we are living in this in these spaces with some societal expectations, with a sexualized body in the spatial realm, and this shapes a lot of our experiences in the built environment. And I came with the mental maps, and this was my observation on how women and girls communities navigate, or our cognitive experiences of the built environment. We navigate urban spaces differently. We have a no-go spaces, we have a fear zones, we have safer routes. There are certain routes we know that it's a no-go in after dark or in a certain time of the day. And I call it the wisdom of women and girls communities. We all have this different actually plan or map of the city than our male peers or the normal people who are conforming to what is norm. So these concepts I emphasize on, and it led to a different as well realization of the built environment. And this led us in the Gender City to investigate feminizing the commons and how to reimagine public transport, transits mode, the multifunctional design that is intergenerational, all the concepts of the community surveillance, of the eyes on the street, rather than the digitized surveillance. But as well, reimagining the commons or the public areas with a feminist perspective and a gender sensitive design, which is never universal. It's very specific, tailored to contexts. And as I mentioned, the step gap and the price we pay because of our gender, and solely because of this, why we are less active in the built environment, why I need to subscribe to a gym in the winter times, because my favorite park is a no-go at night in winters when the nights are longer. So many of our work started as well with the human testimonies, as I mentioned, of how cities keep failing women. And many of them are realizations that we need to do something about it and to change it. And I love this because women are not only data or numbers, it's our lived, positioned experiences in the public sphere. And I love this quote from a man actually that was a bit oblivious about why gender has to do anything with the built environment. And he said, once you see it, you cannot go back. You carry this vision with you forever. And I think all of us in this field, we cannot imagine anything else rather to do than to build community spaces for women and all the marginalized groups actually. So in our organization, we are exploring feminist placemaking, and we see a lot of connecting values with the feminist values we know, because it's about shared ownership, it's about deconstructing power hierarchies and power structures, it's about not short term of gain, but the long-term impact, the sustainable impact. So it's about as well prioritizing lived experiences, communities, and of course the activation for safer places. As I mentioned, the Women After Dark that started last year in Milan, Amsterdam, Berlin, Paris, Rotterdam, and I'm so happy that this year we get to do it globally to gather gender disaggregated data. This is the QR code to our questionnaire. It takes 2 minutes, and we love to know as well your thoughts about your city and mobility after dark. And in the FemDes, our network, so this network we initiated, as I mentioned, globally, we had our FemDes leaders actually forming FemDark stations and capturing snippets of the FemDark mobility and after dark to gather human data and as well videos and pictures of how transits. And these are actually these are the pictures they have been gathering, the art in their in themselves. It's actually amazing. This is from London and some as well of the human data. As I mentioned, this was I never walk at night. I use my bike. I feel that this way I can escape danger easily. And some people mentioned that train stations are actually anxiety inducing after dark, pointing to the poor lit places. And we know that 65% of women avoided taking public transport at night. And 70% of those who aged 14 to 18 also faced harassment during daytime activities. And some as well statistics about surveillance and how sometimes it's used actually against women or to sexualize the women's body. And this is why communities are the heart of the activation or the surveillance that we would aim for. These are more of the testimonies. Everything is shared as well on our websites and medias. So I don't want to take up too much time to share the insights as well in our research, but our research was from the perception of safety, because we know that the perception of safety is something and the actual safety or the feel of it is something else. So we had this wide as well questions about the safety measures and if you use safety measures or not, and as I mentioned, the access to safe public transport. And this actually led us to build an organizational aspect of the FemDes to have this cities program so we can build leaders from the global context with the Femini Kit. And the Femini Kit is the good, the bad, and the ugly in public spaces. And it's about communities mapping feminist places. And we have very wide activities like the After Dark. These are some of the Kolkata walking. And it's very educative because a simple act like walking here in Amsterdam or gathering together in the street is very an act of transgression, perhaps in Kolkata. Our community there was really facing a lot of gazes, question marks, and these are the pictures the women gathered. But we love as well how we are challenging the norm and making representation of women in public space. And but it's very important and necessary to as well have this look beyond the white feminism kind of look, but actually to see how it's still very unfortunate cases of how women and girls still living this year in very unfortunate cities, and how we can do things about it. And I have to say that our global network is actually our like wake up call and acknowledgement of how we should push further and do more and being an act of resistance. This is from Quito, our chapter there, and there are more and more taking this snippets of the Fem Dark, and we have as well the Fem Urban Atlas in the Gendered City, and it's a mapping tool, a spatial mapping tool. As I mentioned, it's the communities that map actually safety. So you have a slider, so you can always slide different 5 models in the Fem Atlas and a global one. So it's wherever you are in the world, we would love to know what you think about your neighborhood, your street, and what we hope we can do is actually gather data and seek policies. And we are going further. I'm actually talking to the Gemeente in Amsterdam, and we are trying to develop some policies and more discussions where I'm looking forward in the, of course, cloud of the political change we face. There is resistance and hope. I hope we can do. So yeah, talking about feminist placemaking, and I mean, I don't want to take much time, but what we are investigating as well, how the system itself can be truly feminist, and how sometimes having women and the quotas representation definitely matters, but how as well we sometimes conform to dominant narratives. Sometimes the system itself that builds these biases can never be the same system that builds equality, and this is why we are investigating feminist systems change and how to shift from tokenistic inclusion, even with communities, and to be really aware of the cultural aspects, the language, that everything that entails these communities, and how it's different to include women and girls communities or marginalized groups into participation in general. But I mean, as well in practice, and this is very important because as women in practice, we face this exclusionary system somehow, and how we can shift to more a system with feminist values of accountability, of decentralizing the outdated man-made patriarchal structures, the power with rather than the power over. So I mean, a lot of investigations actually I'm doing with the systems, and just today I was having this discussion at Delft with the system, the education system of the design and built environment in the faculty, and how it's still exacerbating even the supervisors and the women supervisors, and let alone, of course, how archives and just ignored many and many of the accomplishments of women over the years, and put who are deemed important and their work are important. This is what has been educated over the years. So, I mean, this is our system in the gender city, very much inspired by the World Bank handbook of how this system of gender bias and the reduced access to mobility and safety and health leads to social economic exclusion and leads to lack of agency and representation, and how the system, vicious system, keeps going on, and how to feminist hacking of the system would be the answer. Would love if you have further ideas to, or the femdes in your city that is not there, just drop us a line at info@gendercity.org, or you can always scan our Instagram or website and be in touch. A lot to talk about, but very little time. So happy to be here today, and I'm leaving. Yeah, I'm stopping sharing my screen. And thank you again, Karen, for having me today. And I'm looking forward to hearing Marina.
Corinne, you're on mute. It
Thank you so much,
still
Dr.
happens, I
Prasad.
know.
Sorry. Here I am. Yes, thank you so very much for presenting that, and a topic that is so very important, and something that I think everyone here maybe has very, much experience with in their own lives, and how they have experienced communities in and around their spaces. So thank you for that. And yes, I'm going to pass it over to Marina to give us her background and research on these other very important topics. So take it away, Marina. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really want to leave some time for conversation. So we'll try to rush through the presentation because I think it's always better to talk two ways. I apologize. My hello from London. Obviously, my experience and the project that I'm going to be working is very UK based, but the principle of creating places that work for women and girls really can be hopefully applicable across the world. So I am going to share the screen. Oh, hopefully this is going to work. Apologies. Sorry, it's asking me for, I will need to quit and reopen to share my presentation. I'm sorry for that. Corinne, you don't have it. Maybe that you can do that, or
Let me see. Yeah, Brittany, are you able to have Marina share her screen, or maybe give her permission, or maybe she has already?
no, I have some issue with my laptop, which is asking me to quit
Oh,
and reopen to be able to share.
ah,
I'm sorry, or
okay. Let me see if I think I should have your
I'm
Let's see.
dropping my email in the chat if you want to email it to me.
Okay.
I will also.
I will join the call in a second. I'm really sorry for this. This is really annoying. I was not expecting.
That's okay.
Well, everybody has my email now. If you have any questions about anything during Women History Month, you can reach me at my email.
Let's see. I think.
Great.
Ah, she's back. I just admitted her.
Okay, wonderful.
I'm going to make her co-host. Give me 1 second to find her name on the list. We have a big group with us, which is great.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, give me 1
That
second to
wasn't
make a
that painful.
co-host.
Apologies for that. This is just a silly IT.
Oh, girl, you're fine. It is the life of post-COVID.
No worries.
We don't often use Zoom, so I'm really sorry. This is all looking, but I will get there, I promise. Okay, you can see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Right. So yeah, I will try really quickly to talk about 4 years of Odyssey, working on establishing first UK policies on what it means creating places that work for women and girls, which is the project that I led while working for the Mayor of London on the regeneration of the London Olympics, and the handbook that I have created to essentially summarize all of the lessons learned of 4 years and help my colleagues across the UK, but also is picking up internationally, because I think, again, the kind of like the key essence of the handbook, I think, as I said, it can really be transferred across the world, although some things are very technical and UK. So one of the first questions that when I was tasked with a question in 2021 as a planning policy officer is like, how, what is the role of the built environment in addressing something as big as gender inequality? And a couple of things that obviously then I started looking in terms of the legislations. Well, first thing that came to mind is, well, it is moral obligation of absolutely everyone through each one of the work to think about how are we impacting other people's life. And obviously as the planners and architects, we are impacting everyone's life. So I think it is a moral obligation of all of us to create the places that work for everyone and no one is left behind. But I was also thinking, well, not often as humans, like moral obligation is enough. In the UK, we actually have the Equality Acts, and we have the written into the legislation, the requirement to, regardless of the duty that we are carrying on, and particularly in the built environment sector, as we are impacting people's life, we do address those embedded inequalities, social inequalities, including gender. But I always thought, like, better than saying people why we have to do, I think the better is to understand the benefits of why we should be doing it. And in terms of gender, I mean, we cannot create sustainable place or sustainable future if we leave 51% of population behind. I say 51 because in the UK, 51% are women and girls. But also we need to think about it beyond just equality and inclusion, which of course is very important. But the fact that we are tackling gender inequality, we are also improving the economic growth, we are tackling health and well-being, climate change, and we are truly delivering the social value of our places. So we need to not lose the sight of those broader benefits other than, it's just kind of like a moral obligation, and it is is a fair thing to do because it's a 51% of the population. But in the UK, despite like obviously knowing all of this, and as I said, like having really the Equality Act that is telling us that particularly in the public sector, we need to be tackling all of the inequalities. In planning practice, there is kind of like a really mismatch between understanding what the broader sense of inclusivity is. And I've kind of like created this screenshot, don't bother to read too much, but basically I was trying to guess to prove to myself that our planning policies do require inclusive places. Yet, when it comes to gender, we simply don't know what that means. So in fact, like we do have policies in the UK, but when it comes to planning, we don't know what it means in terms of gender. Often inclusive design is narrowly seen as a disability. And the consequences of this, I'm not going to go through this because Noran, way better than me, kind of like set out all of the inequalities that are a result directly of how we are creating the places and gender inequality, and how disproportionately women and girls are affected. So when I started looking into this topic, there was, and we consider UK being a developed country, of course, but in practice, there was like not single one local authorities or any one practice that was actually targeting, well, there was particularly focusing on gender as an issue or practicing that through their work. So my journey started by looking at the international examples, and Nurum mentioned handbook, the World Bank, which is absolutely brilliant. So again, if this is something you're a task, I do recommend looking what else has been done, including the handbook, but also the book of Nurum. But what is way more important is actually, once understanding the principle, it is to actually speak with the real experts. And those experts are your local women and girls. And this is something that in 2021, I actually realized, well, this is great to have all of this knowledge, how the people do it in the world, but I really still don't understand what are the struggles and the issues of local women and girls. So I went to collect the evidence base, connected with them, spoke with over 500 women and girls to understand how those issues in my particular area look like, so in order to be able to address that. And again, I think this is kind of like a universal. The number one that they reported is a lack of lighting, then intimidation, antisocial behavior and crime. And also, I think this is really important. I put it here just to not to lose oversight. Women and girls don't fear the darkness or public spaces. They fear what might happen to them. But it is also true that the way we design the places can, create the conditions to attack. So again, we need to take the responsibilities. And this is just to kind of like show what those places they reported look like. But while we knew what the problems are, we still didn't know what the solutions are, because, saying to a developer, well, these are the roads where they don't like walking, it really didn't tell them, what they need to do when they're, delivering new proposal in those areas. So I then embarked 3 another years of researching, testing, and my first thing this time was actually going and talking with women and girls to co-create those solutions with them. And this is just one of the ways how we engage with them during the day and during the night. Norm again spoke about that. Essentially, walking the walks with them and listening to their lived experiences to fully understand when they say there is a horrible road they don't walk, what does actually means in practice. And this is where we actually understood that the very key principle of designing places that work for women and girls is genuinely listening to their lived experiences. So, I kind of like almost answered my question the moment I started engaging with them. And I was like, well, that's it. The way we design the places, it is by listening to their lived experiences, because their data, their lived experiences entirely omitted from understanding when we're designing the public spaces. But it's also about overcoming the barriers to their engagement, because it's not true that, we don't hear their stories because they don't want to tell us. It is because there is a gender pay gap, there is a overburden with the caring responsibilities. So women were naturally have less time and less resources to engage with you. So this is where we started the shaping those solutions, and we were started to mandating all of the developers who are engaging with women and girls to financially reward them, because they are truly experts and they were making their design proposals well better. So these are the, reward them, make sure that you have enough time to create the pool of participation that is representative of your local demographics, because if you don't do that, you are again failing and listening to same people. So you need to be very fair, you need to be inclusive, you need to pay participants, and also you need to commit yourself what you're going to do with that data, like how you are actually going to turn those lived experiences into something tangible, whether through the preparing your strategies for the local plan, or how that's going to result in a design solutions. Just a second. Right. And also, what was really important is that the participatory engagement is very fit to the to the design proposal that you're doing. And this is, I think, brilliant case that we were testing now these solutions onto our own design. And I think this is beautiful because it demonstrates all of it. So we originally, before knowing what we know now, we thought that inclusive and fair participation is having equal number of women and men in the room. And this is when we were designing this space that you're looking on the screen. We had teenage boys and teenage girls in equal representation co-designing this place with us. And this is what this was the result of those co-design. We thought we did excellent. We co-designed. We had girls and boys in the room, but after a year researching this topic, I went back to this design proposal, and I actually kind of like spotted there's something really off about it. And I don't know how much you can see on your screen, but every single one of these figures, it's a boy, it's a male. I think there's one girl sitting down the tree and reading the book. So we thought like, okay, well, we got really something wrong here. Let's go now back to the only talking with the teenage girls and ask them a different set of questions. So we asked them, would you use this place? And they said no. So we're like, so why did you tell us to design this? And they said, well, you asked us to design the place for teenagers. And then we realized that women and girls often are also conditioned not to think about their needs. And also there are no good examples out there. So co-designing with them, it just didn't work because they just told us to co-design something that the only design that they see around themselves. So we brought them to a journey, but took a step back and we actually went to co-client with them. So we essentially said, okay, well, we are designing the place for you. So let's sit down and write the project briefs together. And it took us 10 sessions talking about, because there are no known good examples that they could point out, this is what we want. We wanted to then explore, who do you want to be there with? What do you want to see around you? And this is where the beautiful story unfolded. And, they put quite a lot of emphasis, obviously, on the, good lighting, being there with their friends, with the social seating. But they also said, well, I want to know where is the nearest toilet? How long is it going to take me to walk to their toilet? Because if it's 5 minutes at the dark, maybe, I can go on my own. But if it's 15 minutes to the toilet, then maybe I want to bring my friend. And this has shaped the brief. But also, as I said, like, you need to take them to the journey. Our journey with them didn't stop just here. We then brought them to commission together the best architecture firm and choose them with us, the one that they felt, the best would represent their ideas. And again, yeah, this is kind of like all of the beautiful things that came out of, having fun and the connectivity of the places, obviously, feeling the place. And it was beautiful how much emphasis they also put on the sustainability of the proposals. This is just another example of how you can engage in exploratory walks, walking with women, across their routes and listening to their lab stories. And we've learned quite a lot. One of the most important things that we learned, that this was not what we originally thought is going to result, which is like a set of design solutions, kind of like put this lux levels, put the bench here, painted it in pink, and we're gonna, smash the patriarchy. That's really not how it works. We understood it's a process-driven approach. We also learned that it's not just about safety. By talking just about safety, we are embracing the notion that women is a victim needing protection. They have right to the city, intersectionality important, and we need to be looking at a place in a very holistic way. So me being a policy planner and maybe a little bit of a nerd, I also created the, for my colleagues, the definition of what do we mean when we talk about gender-informed urban design and planning. And again, the very core principle is engaging with women and girls in the design process, but it is also about creating those processes as using planning policy tools and development management tools, adopting planning policies that require every development or every strategy to engage with women and girls, but also then to assess the impact of any of those works on them. In practice, that works by setting your commitment, setting what you're going to do, but also having someone who is going to deliver. So I'm talking about the city, city planners here, who is then going to take that into the action. How are you going to collaborate across, the sector, because gender inequality is a very complex topic, and how are you going to measure the impact, because what we don't measure, we don't improve. And in the UK, everything starts with setting very clear policies, and we're starting to see that as a result of my work. We're seeing 3 local authorities embedding gender equality within their policies. And what is really important is because that automatically signals to the developers who are responsible for shaping our cities to embed gender equality as a part of the project brief, and to, before they even start designing the proposal, to engage with local women and girls. And also the other thing is that it gives us the right to have their voices as a material consideration in the process. What that means is that essentially, having adopted local planning policies, we can refuse the proposal if it has a negative impact on women and girls. And this is, for example, a simple wording in a strategic document really can embed and mainstream this. But we were also thinking about, on the other hand, what that means for investors and developers. And again, not to kind of go into the details here because it's very technical for the UK, but we overlay with the existing stages that need to be respected. So, strategic definition, and we provided even the wording in sense of like, okay, well, if you're a developer, you're setting your project brief, just copy paste in these, words that include gender equality and participatory engagement of women and girls, and then that is going to be rolled out throughout the whole project. This is, I think I have this slide because I often speak with architects because, they always come, yeah, great, we love the process, but what do you want me to do? Like what in the physical environment that looks like? So that question of what about the design? I said this is not a set of principle of design solutions, but there are certain elements for sure that we need to be a little bit more sensitive in terms of how we are planning. So the handbook, instead of setting exactly what the lighting should look like, is actually asking the questions, helping design teams to put that gender lens and be a little bit more sensitive about the key important areas that impact everyone's lives, but particularly women's as a caregiver. And as someone who generally is a victim of a systemic gender inequality in public spaces. So thank you very much. Hopefully that leaves some time for a discussion. I try to do this very quick. Yeah, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Marina. That is such insightful work, and I love the examples of where that could be applied. And what's really wonderful is that no matter where you are in the world, the policies are really what is going to matter, and embedding them into the work that we do so that we can see those differences and see that implementation. And I think both of you have amazing examples and ways that you can just plug and play. You can grab the information, the research is there. It's very compelling, and I think that is so wonderful for all of us as planners to know that it's available and that we can also, look to you and your research and be able to kind of have that, easy way to integrate it into what we do. So I think what we'll do now is we'll turn it to questions. I don't know if Brittany wants to help me field some questions here. I thought I might just kick us off a little bit with both of you and maybe ask what it was about what you do now that brought you to where you are today. Like, was there an instance? Was there a realization? I always try and ask people their origin stories of how they found planning, or how they found their passion that they have today. And I thought maybe you would share that with our group here, if that works for you.
Yeah, I can start actually because my story is pretty much not the usual story, I would say. So I think I grew up into feminism first of all, maybe when I was so young, at 6 years old. I have a very feminist dad who introduced me to all the feminist legendaries from Simone de Beauvoir, and then on a very early age about the male supremacy. And I used to actually like discuss these topics with my friends at school. It was a bit weird, but but I don't know, it grew into me the whole feminist literature, and I grew up like I knew as well that I want to be an architect, and this is my profession. And I have to say as well, I was born in like I lived long term in 7 different cities around the world, and this as well shaped my understanding of my set of privileges and marginalizing aspects wherever I am. And I come as well from a diverse family hold. So I have an Egyptian dad to an Italian mom, and born and raised in Dubai, studied in Copenhagen and Amsterdam and Milan and Paris. So I mean, these are the cities I lived at, and it's very different and very similar as well in these cities. And I mean, this shaped a bit my global understanding and the differences of my positionality and my set of privileges in different parts of the world. But 5 years ago, as I mentioned, when I was like mid my PhD and through the end of it, when I realized that, and I started reading all feminist spatial geographies when I had, you know, this my calling like day and night. And I mean, I wanted to make it my profession. And even like when I used to teach design studios, the urban design one in general, I didn't like as well who is the methods, the ways, whose stories are deemed important, etc. This traditional way of educating as well, systemic biases. But and even now I try to in my courses, it's like a very new feminist spatial design and how to navigate my way. Actually teaching this course and creating the course it consumed a lot of time from me, but it's finally the my work and merging my work and research to a new as well system and methods of education. But I mean, yeah, it's as if I found my calling, and for the first time I'm mixing my ideology and my beliefs as a feminist since a very young age to my profession as an urban designer and an architect. Because my master's and PhD, it was a bit more the built environment. So this is why as well I shifted and loved reading Jane Jacobs books and shifted my love to communities. And when I realized that I want to work with women and girls communities, I want to empower women, and for the longest as well to shift from the inheritance of these restrictions that our mothers and grandmothers inherited, but rather just change it. Maybe it will show in the next generations, not yet, but I think we are trying and planting the seeds, hopefully.
Oh, I love that. And Marina?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and kind of like a similar but very different to Nurun. I actually grew up in Serbia, which is very, I think I'm a third generation of, well, I guess of one of the first generation that is not so patriarchal. So I grew up with mom who was, telling me, go and clean your brother's room. And I would just stand there and be like, I don't understand this. Like, he has two hands and it's such a simple task. Like, I really could not understand. But I think that upbringing really, made me feel what gender inequality truly means. And it was really, I think, kind of like interesting that, me as a person really care for the cause, and I can, call myself a feminist. But then in my profession, I would never question how the things are done. And I kind of like started really, thinking about why is that. So my entry to this topic was because in the UK we had several tragic events of male violence against women in public spaces, particularly during COVID. And the board director asked us, what are we doing as a local authority on creating places that are safe for women and girls? And everyone kind of like knowing me and a lot of research I did about the nighttime economy, that kind of like a question landed with me. And I think this is the time when it struck me. I was like, how come I never thought about it in my profession? I have all of these lived experiences, but I never dare to actually bring that into my profession. I think the reasons are two. One is because architecture is kind of like a noble profession. And I feel, you kind of like don't feel like questioning what you're being taught. And the other thing is a little bit of an imposter syndrome, like you're not believed, your stories as a woman. So it just kind of like really struck me as I was like, oh, wow, like, hold on, like not ever through my profession, I actually was able to question something that I simply know through my experience doesn't work. So I literally needed to be given a permission by a board of director, by someone very senior, to have a look into this topic. Now, the kind of like the thing about it is that once you do that engagement, once you hear that someone else's experience is even worse than yours, and you have that evidence base, it's like you cannot unlearn that. And I think this is where people told me not to say it's my obsession, rather my passion, but this is where my whole passion about actually mainstreaming this across the UK, which is what I'm currently doing, kind of like came to play a big role. I was just like, oh, well, now we have all of this knowledge. We now have the data, and we have, all of the research to, as you said, like the evidence is too compelling not to be able to do it. So I think, yeah, this is where I'm on my journey of just being like, no, everyone needs to know this.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. And I think that really speaks to, who you are as a person, your lived experiences, and then the culmination of that is now the work that you get to change the lives of other people based on that. And I think that is so powerful. And I think that it will have that longevity too, because it's something that everyone knows needs to change. And how do we go about doing that? And how can we as women in planning and, be leaders in that space? So I really think that that's amazing body of work from both of you. And it just is from within you. It's like an innate ability to do these things, which is so amazing. Brittany, are there other questions from the group here that we could ask that you see?
I fell into the mute button. We had one that asked for a link of the handbook. It has been shared. We've had a few people that have personally messaged me that have asked for either the PowerPoints or the QR codes, if those could be shared. Here we go. Gretchen Hunt. What cities have you worked for within the US?
I would assume that's a question for Nuran, because I'm purely based in the UK. So yeah.
Yeah, I have to personally say we haven't officially worked, but the FemDes is expanded in the US. So we have representation in Chicago, and it's really very new because this is the FemDes leader in the Chicago chapter, and we are just discussing what can be done in that context. And I'm really looking forward, and as well because we just finished the selection of the FemDes leaders across the world, and it just as well appointed the New York one. And we previously had as well the NYC so in the FemDes, but I have to say we were working on research and like generic, non-contextual stuff and evidence and data. But I mean, it's happening, and I'm still looking forward to the learnings and to navigate this context. But yeah, I cannot say that I personally haven't experienced directly, but still looking forward to what will show up.
I think Brittany, you're on mute again. No.
I did it again. I said I did drop the FemDes link and the FemDes network in the chat for everybody. There's a really good question here that I think can be applicable to all three of you. Do you have any advice for students looking to begin their career in urban studies, especially as a woman? Very applicable to WPD.
If I can address this one, I would say please do start your career in urban planning, because we do need more representation of women. And be bold, absolutely be bold to challenge the things. Again, I'm kind of like a mid through my career almost, and I really regret not standing for the things that I believe are right, just simply because they were not written into the handbooks. So I wrote a handbook, and I hear from my colleagues, often female colleagues, that they say, oh, this is such a powerful tool for me to bring my experience. So I don't think we need that permission to raise our voices, but now we have the data to challenge the status quo. And I would just say, I wish you all the best, and challenge the status quo. That would be beautiful. And share your knowledge with us.
Yeah, I have to say, I have to add, this won't be easy. And we I have to say as well, generally, some women fell into the trap of conforming to narratives, to not being the difficult woman, the opposing one, the yeah, it's never easy, but I always say as well, if we don't start somewhere, if we are not a collective, then you cannot shush us. And even today, like in the faculty, how even the dean is a challenge to say I'm a feminist and I want to incorporate like more equality, more representation, and this is because many of the women professors showed up challenged, and when there are many of us, it will be easier for the individuals, because yeah, it's never easy as well to be a woman and to be opposing or not conforming, and as well we are accustomed for generations and generations to conform. But yeah, definitely don't conform. And when we are more and the collectiveness, it will make it easier to take the collective slap on the face, we call it, because it's never easy. I have to say, you can be excluded, you can be yeah, definitely it's not like a simple word, just yeah, show up and and oppose and say your opinion. But I mean, yeah, collectively we can do it. It's never individually.
And I think I'll just add also, my background started in architecture. My, undergrad was in architecture. Then I found city planning. I had my moment, and went for my master's in city and regional planning, because it was more than just the building. It was about the entire community. And for women in planning in my architecture school, I was one of only a few women, and not everyone lasted the 4 years through the program. Women were falling off during the program, and at the very end it was a small percentage of women. And so it would be the encouragement to do the urban studies, to sign up for the courses, to go to a conference, to meet with other women and other networks. I always say your network is your net worth, and that's not always monetary. It's your opportunities, it's your partnerships, relationships, connections to others, which led me down this path, and to give a little bit more confidence, I think, in what we do and why we do it. And we will have more numbers and be able to surge in this profession, I think would be really helpful. And to be able to then pass it along as a mentor, to bring others along with you, as as you're getting into the ranks, and becoming that kind of strong force. And I do think about the text that I was asked to read, in undergrad and grad school. They were mostly from white men, and so I always encourage women to write the books, like be
Mm-hmm.
cited, do the research, be included, write as many books as possible, because we need as many women voices in those conversations as we possibly can. I wish, Jane Jacobs had, I wish there were 100, Jane Jacobs that we could reference. And so I always encourage women, be that bold step, as Marina said, and make sure that you're able to be, in the conversations and echoing, kind of this resounding kind of, just sort of the experiences that we have, and the education that we have, just to enhance it in a way that can be better for all women. So I think start now, start your urban studies now, and find your passion, and find, the things that you love to do, and make it your own. And, and we can all have success. There's not a finite amount of success. Every single woman can be successful in what they do. And that's a shared accomplishment among us all.
Let's see. We have one more question. I know we're going over on time. Speakers, real quick, are you okay if we go a few minutes over, or do you have a hard stop?
I am fine.
Okay, last question, if it's okay, because it's very relevant to the US right now. Emily asked, in the US, recent federal policies have made it more difficult to integrate DEI into practicing and planning. Do you have any experience in or suggestions for integrating feminist planning into policy and development when it is essentially becoming illegal?
I read this question and I'm not surprised this emerged. I mean, it's a brilliant, no, well, not a brilliant, it's a sad reality. And I thought a lot about this because obviously, you know, US impacts the rest of the world as well, and the thinking, and we are seeing obviously what is happening as well in the Netherlands. And I would say it is, unfortunately, some of these things do need a political support. It really, unfortunately, it is like that. I've seen this in the UK where we try to implement this kind of like a bottom up. It doesn't work. We need politicians and senior leaders to support us to be able to mainstream this, unfortunately. But I thought a lot about this, and I think this is the right time for us to do more research because no oppression in the world lasts forever. And there will be time when we would need all of this knowledge and all of the ammunition to be out there on the other side of this, you know, craziness, to then support and do the right thing. So I would just say, don't get discouraged. The time will come when all of this knowledge is going to be extremely helpful. But unfortunately, I think a lot of these things can be politically obstructed. So maybe it's just a time to push and, you know, signal other people that we are still here and, you know, and taking care of it, although politics are not maybe aligned.
Yeah,
Good point.
totally. I second this, and as you mentioned, it's impacting everywhere in the world, and we can all feel it, and it's shrinking of the even civic spaces, the even the expression, and I think us being and continuing and navigating our way through this very uncertain times is our form of resistance, and we are here, we are resisting, and I mean, if we cannot develop further, the least is we resist, and this is the least we can do.
Wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up real quick. A few closing things. Thank you, ladies, for coming. It was great. We actually have to really have you guys back. Norrin, your book is actually on our book club list at some point this year, so we'll have to get you just, and same as Corin's, Ava Tanner City Planner. Speaking of book club, I've dropped a few books that we recommend from our book club in the chat. If you haven't read them, that relate to our topic. Invisible Women, it's my favorite book, dealing with data biases. Feminist City, The Gendered City, and of course, the classic, Jane Jacobs. I've also dropped in the chat, if you scroll up a little bit, all of our events for this month for the Women in Planning Division. We have trivia next week at 3 p.m. Eastern. Please come. It's a chance to network and catch up on some trivia. And then in correlation to our conversation, we have bossy bias. Who here, raise your hand if you haven't been called bossy. Okay, nobody's raised their hand. That's great. We have that 2 weeks from now to discuss the bossy bias and how to combat that. And then we still have tickets for sale for our reception that is up for NPC, the National Planning Conference in Denver this year. This recording will be online and recorded. And yes, Aaron, everything this month will be recorded and online at APA. It's women.planning.org. I've dropped it in the chat for you. And one last quick thing on the comment we just said. Last month we did coffee break with planning in the Black community, and we discussed what we can do now as planners in the US when DEI terms are no longer accepted. I think that's something we could probably look into a little bit more as WPD, and we came to the conclusion of seems like we're going to have to use some different terminology. If they don't like the word diversity, then it seems, you know, anti-intellectualism is a big thing across the US and people writing these policies right now. So we'll just look into some synonyms that they don't know what they mean. At least for the US. You got to play their game, right, ladies? Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. If you would like to be contacted about anything, or if you'd like to connect with our speakers, yes, I still have to take a picture. Please drop your email in your chat right now and we'll follow up. And I would like to get a picture real quick for the people that are still here. So if you could turn on your camera and smile. I have two pages I'll have to take a picture of and I'll have to print screen it. So bear with the millennial real quick. Okay, let's see who else we got. Lauren, student, Gabrielle, Amber, Allison. We'll wait for you guys to turn your screen on. Okay. Hold on. I'm waiting for everybody to stop doing the messages for 1 second. Okay. Is everybody ready? Okay, first screen. Let's print screen it. Awesome. Now let me go to page 2. Ready? Print screening. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Awesome. I got it. Thank you guys. Super excited to have you. Looking forward to having you for more of some of our Women's History Month events. And don't forget, we have book club on bookclubs.com. Just search APA WPD. And we also have our monthly coffee breaks, fourth Wednesday of the month at 3 p.m. Thank you, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you,
Thank
Christopher and
you. Thanks
Marina.
for having us.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you all so much for coming.
I'm going to hang back for a second, Corin.
Okay. Bye, Marina.